The Gambino family.
Top mafiosi in the United States.
Brooklyn, 1920s. Prohibition isn't just a ban, it's a business opportunity. Italy-born Salvatore Toto de Aquila runs one of the city's most feared street gangs, but it's Carlo Gambino who shapes the future. Gambino, more accountant than hitman, rises by keeping violence behind closed doors. His genius is subtlety. No press, no fireworks. He connects the family to labor unions, hijacks the city's trucking industry, and carves out a fortune in construction and narcotics trafficking. Underboss Paul Castellano takes over in the 1970s, favoring white-collar crime. No more shootings on the street. But with the cash comes arrogance. Castellano grows isolated, building a mansion in Staten Island and treating trusted capos more like servants. This tension breeds the family's first fatal mistake, John Gotti, the Dapper Don. Gotti is flashy, all charisma, gold watches, and magazine covers. In 1985, he orchestrates Castellano's murder in public, outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan, signaling the mob's return to blood feuds. But as Gotti attracts headlines, he draws the FBI's full attention. Wiretaps catch him all but admitting criminal rackets to associates. In 1992, Gotti is convicted on RICO charges. Error chain, arrogance, visibility, and a betrayal by his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, who flips, testifies, and exposes decades of secrets. Legacy, the Gambinos survive, diminished and hyper-paranoid, with operations shifting to low-profile rackets and fraud. They're a case study in how ego and exposure cripple even the most powerful organization.
To wait for Castellano.
The Genovese family.
The government's charged that you're the right man.
If the Gambinos were the showmen, the Genoveses were the professors. Their story begins with Charles Lucky Luciano, a Sicilian immigrant who builds the first U.S. Mafia commission. His rig, efficient, brutal, but administratively brilliant. No murder without board approval, no feud without a plan. Vito Genovese takes the throne post-World War II. He cultivates a boss of bosses aura. Rarely photographed, always 2 steps removed from the action. Frank Costello, his rival, is the family's lobbyist, nicknamed the Prime Minister, because he owns politicians as easily as he acquires nightclubs. The Genoveses excel at racketeering and loan sharking. They seize control of the Longshoremen's Union, skimming off every crate and container moving through New York Harbor. They expand into gambling, stock fraud, and shakedowns that operate through invisible hands. Their secret? Order and secrecy. The Genovese code is never tell, never show. Soldiers don't know bosses, and bosses isolate themselves with layers of buffers. But in the 1980s and 90s, surveillance tech, undercover agents, and RICO law start eroding that silence. Vincent Chin Gigante, the last old world Don, pretends to be insane, shuffling around Greenwich Village in pajamas and slippers to avoid wiretaps. It works for years, but eventually, testimony from high-ranking defectors and relentless law enforcement expose the act. Error chain, over-reliance on insulation and internal paranoia. When the system finally cracks, the damage is severe but slow. Genovese power fades without scandal, replaced by myth. Legacy. The Genoveses remain the benchmark for mafia discretion. What survives is a skeleton crew, still present in racketeering and gambling, but now studied by law students as the gold standard of organized crime organization. The Lucchese family.
Where do I start?
Harlem, 1920s. The Galliano crew is known for violence, protection rackets, hijackings, and iron-fisted street justice. When Tommy Lucchese takes power, everything changes. He brings business acumen, making peace with rivals, then quietly embedding the family in the city's garment and construction trades. At their peak, the Luccheses run everything from airport heists at JFK, the infamous 1978 Lufthansa heist, immortalized in Goodfellas, to citywide heroin rings. Their books are full. The family prefers blue-collar jobs that scale, avoiding high-profile turf wars. But the real danger always comes from the inside. Wise guy Henry Hill becomes a government witness after getting caught skimming millions and facing death from his own people. His testimony helps the FBI indict dozens, upending the inner sanctum. New boss Vittorio Amuzzo's paranoia makes matters worse. He targets loyal captains and micromanages from afar, sowing chaos. Error chain, breakdown in leadership trust. When insiders feel hunted, they flip to the feds. Legacy. The Lucchese remain active but fractured, with new leadership often installed by violence. Every capo regime knows, loyalty only counts until the next court date, and any criminal dynasty is one informant away from unraveling. The Bonanno family.
Joe Bonanno.
Joseph Bonanno, upper-crust Sicilian, nicknamed Joe Bananas, moves seamlessly between Sicilian old-school and American ambition. His family profits from heroin smuggling, the pizza connection routes, drugs from Italy through pizzerias in New York and the Midwest. Internal power struggles, known as the Banana Wars, erupt when Bonanno is targeted for a hit and disappears for 2 years. The five families question his fitness and vote out the Bonannos from the Mafia Commission. But the family's gravest wound comes from Donnie Brasco, a.k.a. undercover FBI, Agent Joseph Pistone. Pistone penetrates the Bonanno middle ranks, gathering 6 years of evidence and earning enough trust to be nearly made. His operation topples dozens of wise guys, plants seeds of permanent distrust, and forces every mafia family to rethink recruitment rules. Error chain, overconfidence in blood ties, and a failure to detect infiltration. The Donnie Brasco operation is the textbook disaster every mob boss fears. Legacy, the Bonannos exist, but fragmented. Their survival depends on constant adaptation, mistrust, and moving away from family-first recruitment. The old-school days when a Sicilian accent could guarantee trust are long gone. The Colombo family.
That's the risk you take.
Formed in the ashes of the Profaci crime empire, the Colombos are synonymous with civil war. Joseph Profaci, their patriarch, is ruthless, causing a decade of intra-family conflict known as the Gallo-Profaci Wars. Ambitious captains keep rebelling, first the Gallos, then the Arenas, splitting the family's loyalty and creating endless cycles of bloodshed. The Colombo's error is unique. Most crime syndicates are destroyed by law enforcement. The Colombos do most of the job themselves. By the 1990s, headlines fill with details of mob hits. Underbosses murdered in public, loved ones caught in the crossfire. The FBI exploits this, flipping mobsters of the week and planting bugs in their safe houses. Error chain, internal strife, public violence, and a culture of revenge that erases the foundation of omertà. Legacy, technically still operational, but the Colombo family is a warning. When ambition outweighs stability, any mafia becomes its own worst enemy. The Chicago outfit.
Don't make a lot of noise.
Chicago, the original American city of gangsters. Johnny Torrio brings organization, turning bootlegging's chaos into a syndicate. Al Capone, his violent protege, turns it into a national phenomenon. Capone's operations include illegal alcohol, prostitution, gambling, bribery, and murder on scale. Prohibition money pours in. Capone courts journalists, builds soup kitchens for the poor, and poses as a public servant. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 1929 cements the outfit's reputation for ruthless efficiency. But Capone's fame is his undoing. Agents led by Elliot Ness, the Untouchables, fail to pin murder on Capone, but use financial forensics to convict him of tax evasion. He serves years in Alcatraz. The outfit, faced with constant crackdowns, pivots. They take the formula to Las Vegas, building the first mafia casino pipelines and pioneering money laundering. Later bosses like Tony Accardo and Sam Giancana institute a code of invisibility. No press, no publicity stunts. They last decades longer than any New York family. Error chain, hubris and overexposure, plus federal innovation, from RICO to interstate task forces. Legacy. The outfit runs smaller crews today, rumored to control gambling, labor, and low-key rackets across Illinois. But the golden years of Gangster City are gone, and every operation runs under the shadow of IRS and FBI accountants. The Sicilian Mafia. Cosa Nostra isn't one family, it's a shadow government, born in the hills and citrus orchards of Sicily. They begin by protecting landowners and extorting peasants, then funnel operations into New World banking, drug trafficking, and political corruption. The mafia in Sicily controls not just racketeering, but entire regions, deciding elections, appointing police, and running heroin to America via French Connection and Pizza Connection networks. Infamous bosses like Salvatore Totorina and Bernardo Provenzano order assassinations of judges and politicians, including the notorious 1992 bombings that kill anti-mafia crusaders Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. The violence is so public and disastrous, it forces Italy's police and intelligence services to unite. Operation Maxi Trial, 1986 to 1992, becomes the world's largest anti-mafia crackdown. Over 400 convictions, hundreds of informants, and more than $1 billion in assets seized. Error chain, mistaking fear for invincibility. The mafia's campaign of terror turns average Sicilians against them, creating a flood of pentiti turned informants. Legacy. Cosa Nostra survives as a fractured, hyper-cautious network, most power now eclipsed by rival groups, most bosses dead or imprisoned. Its era of open rule is history. Yakuza. The Yakuza trace roots to the 17th century samurai outcasts, originally street gamblers and peddlers. Their tattoos, rituals, and finger-cutting as punishment for betrayal are legend. In modern times, the Yakuza become Japan's public underworld, running protection rackets, brothels, gambling houses, construction, and even entertainment. They operate in broad daylight, renting offices, distributing newsletters, and sometimes even serving as unofficial disaster relief in the chaos after earthquakes. Major syndicates like the Yamaguchi-gumi, Sumiyoshi-kai, and Inagawa-kai structure themselves as corporate hierarchies. For decades, the Yakuza were tolerated. Government policies saw them as lesser threats, keeping petty crime in check. But in the 21st century, shifting laws, international pressure, and money laundering investigations force the groups underground. Banks freeze assets, construction contracts dry up, and young recruits dwindle. Error chain. Failure to adapt globalized crime, unwittingly leaving too many trails and causing public revulsion at displays of violence. Legacy. The Yakuza are shrinking, still powerful in hidden places, but their era as semi-legal corporate criminals is ending. Russian Bratva. The Bratva isn't one group, it's the sum of dozens. Their story begins with Soviet gulags, thieves' codes, brutal loyalty codes, and black markets built under totalitarian oversight. When the Soviet Union collapses in 1991, a power vacuum lets oligarchs, ex-KGB agents, and career criminals form syndicates across Russia, Ukraine, and beyond. Major bosses like Semyon Mogilevich control weapons, oil, finance fraud, cybercrime, and human trafficking at global scale. Bratva groups launder billions through European and American banks, exploiting weak regulation and corrupt officials. Their operations, contract killings, arms trading, gambling, and large-scale cyber fraud. Unlike Italian or Japanese mafias, the Bratva have no central hierarchy. Alliances can change quickly. Law enforcement using Interpol, Europol, and US-Russia cooperation makes major inroads in the 2000s, arresting dozens of bosses and freezing assets worldwide. Error chain. Overconfidence in chaos, believing cross-border crime networks are untouchable. Legacy. The Bratva are less visible but more dangerous. They've woven criminality into global markets. Instead of dying with a shootout or a high-profile bust, their threat is now, like a virus, hidden in the wiring. Every mafia family's rise is built on the same blocks: tight social fabric, institutional corruption, and finding the cracks in the law. But sooner or later, every dynasty leaves a trail. The lesson for both cops and criminals: the error chain is never obvious until the moment it snaps. Found this forensic dive sharp? Subscribe for more detailed breakdowns on cartels, gangs, cults, and infamous escapes. Every error chain, every downfall, every untold story. Stay curious and stay one step ahead.